The collapse of the USSR put the newly independent states, including Kazakhstan, in a very difficult situation. There were many challenges and new tasks, and it became necessary to deal not only with domestic, but also with foreign policy and security issues, which previously had belonged to the responsibility of the Union government in Moscow. A new era of state building was beginning, incredibly complex, but very important for the future of Kazakhstan. At this time, President Nursultan Nazarbayev showed his best qualities as a politician, and at one historical moment he had to move from the regional level in the former USSR, where he was undoubtedly one of the most important political figures before the collapse of the USSR, to the international level. For Kazakhstan, the time had come for great diplomacy, which in fact then completely depended on the efforts of Nursultan Nazarbayev and his small team. Among all the questions that faced the young state and its first president was the question of the fate of the part of the Soviet nuclear complex that was located on the territory of Kazakhstan. It was a very impressive arsenal of nuclear weapons. There were 1,216 nuclear warheads on bombers and ballistic missiles alone. Theoretically, their possession could make Kazakhstan the fourth nuclear power in the world. Nursultan Nazarbayev later recalled his conversation with British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who asked him about Kazakhstan's intentions with regard to nuclear weapons on its territory. I clearly understood that she was asking a question not just from herself, but from a number of Western politicians. And the whole negotiation process is still ahead, and it is impossible to reveal the cards ahead of time. However, I made the decision to be equally open with her and formulated my position very clearly. Kazakhstan is responsible for the risk of weapons proliferation, but we need the guarantees of nuclear weapon states, and we look forward to serious investments. And without this, we are not ready for a detailed conversation. On December 5th, 1994, the Treaty on Security Guarantees to States that have acceded to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons was signed in Budapest. It was signed by Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine, and the guarantor countries, the United Kingdom, Russia, and the United States. For these countries, the renunciation of nuclear weapons was the best solution. In addition, the resources available at that time were not enough to maintain nuclear arsenals. Nursultan Nazarbayev wrote, "One can imagine how complex and ambiguous the situation with nuclear weapons was immediately after the collapse of the USSR. It is enough to recall the visit of Secretary of State Warren Christopher to Kazakhstan, who actually demanded the early signing of a treaty on the destruction of mines where nuclear missiles were based. In general, the peculiarities of the policy of President Nursultan Nazarbayev at this time included the ability to transform existing problematic issues into strategic directions of development. You can imagine how difficult the situation was in these difficult years. It is no secret that many former Soviet soldiers did not agree with the dismantling of the huge military machine that went back to the history of the USSR. Many expressed their disagreement in acts of defiance and sabotage. It is known that pilots from the military base in Lugovoye hijacked Su-27 fighters en route to Russia. Subsequently, Kazakhstan and Russia had to settle this issue, and this was part of a complex but necessary and important policy of the system of international relations around the collapse of the USSR, in which Kazakhstan took an active part. It is less known that a very similar situation occurred at the Shagan airfield near Semipalatinsk, where two regiments of the Tu heavy bombers from the 79th Heavy Bombardment Division were based. They were carriers of nuclear weapons and were aimed at Southeast Asia and the Indian Ocean. In this regard, we can also recall the Operation Sapphire, when in 1993, 600 kilograms of weapons-grade uranium-235 enriched to 90% were found unexpectedly at the Ulba metallurgical factory in Ust-Kamenogorsk. The amount was enough to produce 24 nuclear bombs. It was later revealed that this uranium had been produced in the 1970s as part of the secret Alpha program, which had been controlled in Moscow. After the closure of this program, the uranium remained in storage at the Olba factory. It was impossible to silence this information. The security risks were too great. This was a violation of the agreements related to international agreements on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. As a result, the leadership of Kazakhstan made a very subtle move. It allowed the director of the Olba factory, Vitaly Meta, to report this information to the U.S. Embassy. As a result, the United States removed uranium from Uсть-Kamenogorsk, and this page was turned. The responsibility shown by the Kazakh leadership and the high level of efficiency in responding to the difficult situation caused this operation to pass without any excesses, including for international relations. Subsequently, 600 kilograms of uranium-235 was converted into low-enriched fuel for nuclear power plants. Nursultan Nazarbayev wrote on this issue, by the end of May 1995, nuclear weapons were completely destroyed or removed from the territory of Kazakhstan. Another important point regarding the nuclear issue for Kazakhstan is, of course, the story of the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site. More nuclear bombs were detonated here than anywhere else, about 500 nuclear explosions altogether. Moreover, a significant part of the residue is in the atmosphere. Given the fact that a fairly significant part of the population lives in and around the region, explosions in the atmosphere and underground have poisoned the lives of hundreds of thousands of civilians of our republic for many years. On the one hand, the leadership of Kazakhstan actively negotiated with the Soviet leadership about the fate of the landfill. On the other hand, the social movement Novaya Semey became more active. On August 27, 1991, Nursultan Nazarbayev issued a decree on the closure of the Semipalatinsk test site. Of course, this opportunity was due to the growing influence of Nursultan Nazarbayev on the political scene of the USSR in 1989 to 1991. Kazakhstan has consistently advocated the peaceful use of atomic energy against its military component. In fact, it was this circumstance that made Kazakhstan a country where, by the decision of the international community, a bank of low-enriched nuclear fuel was placed. This bank was placed on the territory of the Olba metallurgical factory, where 600 kilograms of enriched uranium were once found. It was very symbolic that instead of a military weapon, peaceful atomic energy was housed here, and it emphasizes the authority of Kazakhstan, accumulated over the years of a balanced foreign policy and its ability to respond to emerging challenges.